Trustee Woody? Trustee Washington, you have a quorum.
Thank you. The first action item on the agenda today, sorry, I'm going to breeze through this because I've been told my glide path is 45 minutes, is the approval of the meeting minutes. You received the minutes from the March 28th, 2017 meeting in the committee packet. Do we have any corrections? If not, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Madam Chair, move approval.
So moved. I
And-
second.
Thank you. It has been properly motioned and second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? So moved. The next action item is the election of a vice chair. May I take a nomination for a vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Trustee Reed, please.
Thank you, Trustee
Second.
Moore.
I second that.
And it's been motioned and second. Well, it appears to be the day of nominating folks who aren't here. Any other nominations? All
I
right.
move the nomination be closed on one name.
All right. Well, if that is the case, I would like to, it has been motioned and second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Trustee Reed is our illustrious vice chair. The next, the final two action items today are related directly to the strategic plan. I believe it was actually at this meeting last year that the board decided that it wanted to take a more active role and guided the strategic planning process. I would like to thank the strategic planning task force, Dr. Eddington, staff, and each of the board members for your diligent work, weekends, nights, text messages, calls, just being very available to guide us through this process and get to this point. The document that you see before you today is a product of our guidance as a board with feedback from multiple stakeholder groups, and what I think we have is a really strong document that will definitely guide us for the next 5 years. This is intended, as we have said over and over again, to be transformative and also to be a living document. And so as we continue, the metrics that are included in here will be reported out on regularly in our meetings. So before we go into the actual strategic plan approval process, there is one substantive change that we needed to go over, and that is the vision statement. So the vision statement that we saw a year ago has been modified. This is the proposed vision statement. I would like to provide or allow Dr. Eddington to provide some context around the vision statement that we see before us and open it to discussion and or approval. Dr. Eddington?
Thank you, Trustee Washington. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
As part of the strategic planning process, the work group took a look at the vision statement from the perspective of seeing if there were some modifications that would be appropriate. And we received some feedback from some of the trustees around the central thought that we should have a focused, tight vision statement that speaks to who we want to be. And so we worked and came up with this proposed vision statement for your consideration, and if approved, it would be included in the strategic plan moving forward.
Thank you, Dr. Eddington. And each board member should have actually had an opportunity to discuss this specific item with Dr. Eddington offline in preparation for the meeting. Just wanted to make sure there are or see if there are any other questions or comments or concerns about this new vision statement.
Madam Chair, I'd offer both a comment and a motion.
Okay.
Comment, thank you to you and the team for your diligence and hard work in pulling this together, and I absolutely do believe that the proposed statement does speak to where we're going. So with that in mind, I'd like to propose a motion that we accept as our vision statement for forwarding to the full board. Florida Agricultural Mechanical University will be recognized as a premier land-grant doctoral research university that produces global competitive graduates.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. It has been properly motioned and second. Any questions, comments, debate?
Trustee McCoy.
Yes, Trustee McCoy, you're recognized.
I'm not on the committee, but one of the recommendations from past experience, I would highly recommend that somewhere we make a note to ourselves to review our mission statement on some kind of repetitive basis, mission and vision, but more importantly, our vision. Not that it will necessarily significantly change, but it just normally warrants us really asking ourselves, does that represent where we are heading, and do the words capture that? And I've found that the periodic review is absolutely necessary to make sure it does contain the words that we want.
Thank you, Trustee McCoy. Duly noted. That is something we can definitely incorporate, review, regular review. We'll figure out how often that makes sense to do of our mission and vision statement. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and second. All those in favor of approving the new vision statement?
Aye.
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 Opposed? We move to, well, we have approved our new vision statement, so congratulations to us. I'm like, this is moving way faster than even I anticipated. All right, so on to the big strategic plan. So again, as I mentioned, this is, a culmination of efforts. It's, I feel, a really good product. We have worked pretty hard and diligent in making sure that we have kept everybody sort of abreast and informed along the way. Dr. Eddington, I would like for you to give sort of a synopsis of where we are, and then we can go from there.
Okay, thank you. And before I do anything, I did want to pause and recognize the tremendous work by our team. I'm sitting here with my fellow co-chairs, Dr. Friday Stroud and Ms. Beverly Barrington, and we also have several members of our work group in the audience, I believe.
Y'all still here?
Can y'all stand up, please?
It's your baby.
Yes. And we also have our Fred Seaman from MGT, who also played an invaluable role, he and his colleague Nate Johnson. Thank you. And of course, I have to acknowledge my new best friend, Trustee Washington, for really pushing this process forward. I appreciated that because she's very diligent. I think Trustee Lawson in his letter said meticulous. And that's very appropriate, and I appreciate the partnership that we had established to get this thing done and the guidance that you have provided and input on where we should be going, so I appreciate that. And all of that has brought us to this point where we have developed a product in terms of the strategic plan. I just briefly wanted to mention some of the highlights of the plan and talk about how we got here and where we're going pending your approval. So we've developed a 5-year strategic plan, and it's linked to the mission. It was developed with a lot of engagement involving our stakeholders. It articulates why we selected the strategic priorities and the goals and the focus areas. It has specific strategies that talk about where we're going, and there's a rationale associated with that. There's metrics and targets and outcomes, too, that speak to how the plan will help transform the institution over the next 5 years. With that said, the goal of the plan, and as we were instructed by the board from the beginning, is to develop a plan that's transformational, that's going to help build a better institution. And so when we think about how the institution will be improved by the implementation of this plan, we think about the student experience and student success. We'll be much further along in those areas. We think about faculty, support for faculty, engagement of faculty in their efforts, that's going to be significantly improved. We think about the administrative services and customer service. There's a huge focus on that here as well, and that has included shaping our thought based on a lot of the feedback that we got from some of the stakeholders, and enhancing and increasing our engagement with our alumni, stakeholders, and constituents to help strengthen the institution, and then really also having a strong focus on improving on performance metrics and targets and key indicators of our success. And so we took all of these things into account as a team throughout this process and crafted a plan that we feel, if implemented well, will position us where we can see these types of enhancements 5 years from now. You know, quickly just highlighting that the plan has 6 high-level strategic priorities. First one is around the student experience. It focuses on increasing student success, increasing degree attainment, and providing opportunities for our students to develop while here and after they leave the institution. The second priority focuses on our faculty with the goal to really help develop and strengthen our current faculty and support them while also recruiting and retaining new hires that align with our strategic priority areas. 3 has to do with our research, infrastructure, and productivity and commercialization, putting a greater focus on those things, and again, providing additional support for faculty in those areas, and putting a greater emphasis on commercializing some of our work products from our research activities. 4 speaks to engaging our community, alumni, stakeholders, and increasing financial support for the institution. 5 has to do with our business infrastructure, really taking a hard look at our services, administrative services, and the quality of those and the technology that supports those things, and making sure we have first-class processes in place. And that is connected to our focus on customer service and making sure that we have high-quality customer service across the institution, and that anyone who engages with us, whether it's an internal or external constituent, they get consistent, high-level customer service. And so for each of these strategic priorities, we have established a set of related goals which have strategies and metrics tied to them so we can track our progress. So that is a high-level snapshot of the plan. Pending your approval, we plan to transition quickly into the implementation phase, and the oversight of this implementation process will be handled by our Division of Strategic Planning Analysis and Institutional Effectiveness. And as we move forward this summer, I just wanted to list a few of the things that we're planning to do to give you a sense of what's going to happen after this week. We're going to have action plans, and I'll show you a template in a moment, where we use the action plans to really drive the implementation of these specific initiatives and stratify our metrics for reporting purposes. So we have a bunch of metrics, as was mentioned earlier around another topic. And so we have what we call board level metrics, we have administrative level metrics, and on down. And so we're going to work on parsing those out and determining what type of information should be presented to the board. And I'll have a sample scorecard to reflect that. We're going to use implementation teams around some of these areas to really implement some things, like our research areas. We're going to bring faculty together and have them work on some of the finer details and refine some of the directions we need to go in certain areas. We're going to continue collecting some baseline information. So we have a lot of baseline information for our metrics, but there's some information that the institution doesn't normally collect that we're going to begin collecting, and that's going to have to serve as our baseline. And then we're also going to have a marketing campaign, to really increase awareness for the plan amongst our community and stakeholders, and just make sure that everyone feels the energy that's coming from this process, and the momentum continues. Also, we want to start implementing as soon as possible the initiatives in the plan. And one thing to note is that the plan has to be approved by the BOG. And so the provost has talked with the BOG, and we're tentatively scheduled to present that in August, pending the approval by this board. Timeline, just want to give you a feel for some of the priorities in the first couple of years, right? I mean, everything in the plan is a priority, but we're not implementing everything at once. In year one, these student success initiatives are a major focus, and that's actually probably the highest priority moving out the gate. And some of the things that we're doing are revamping how we handle our whole advisement structure. And hiring a person to head the Undergraduate Student Success Center is going to be a major priority for us, and as well as kicking off a lot of the high-level student success initiatives, and some of them are listed there. our whole recruitment enrollment management. So VP Hudson has developed a plan. He's going to fully implement that as we move forward quickly. And that includes the 2+2 agreement initiative that he discussed earlier. In terms of our academic programs, we're going to be evaluating them. You heard earlier in my other presentation some of the strategies that we're going to use, but also we really, and in the plan, we talk about making sure that we have the right set of academic program offerings that align with our strategic priorities and that position us to offer our students the kind of competitive opportunities that we want them to have. And also we'll begin the process for pushing forward those degree programs. So we heard you, Chair Lawson, earlier about trying to accelerate some of those high priority programs. And so we're going to take a look at that. There's a marketing communications component to this that has to do with, enhancing our website and then having marketing communications support for our recruitment efforts, facilities that you heard about earlier today. Several of our research activities include providing support for faculty, fundraising. We're going to really try to be more aggressive around our fundraising. Begin looking at the business infrastructure. Some of that has already begun under VP Ford. And customer service, we're really going to sit down quickly and put that plan in place for how we're going to improve our customer service. And then moving into year two, obviously those initiatives in year one will continue. And then there are going to be some additional things that start, such as under student success, we're going to implement our quality enhancement plan in year two. Academic programs, we're going to, really take a look at implementing restructuring based on our evaluation and analysis. That's going to kick off quickly. That's when we're also going to begin to try to implement the new programs that we're proposing. Faculty, we're going to be making hires, we're going to be providing startup packages for them, and we have a rewards program that we're going to implement and expand, continue looking at our business infrastructure, and really using a lot of surveys of our stakeholders to get their perceptions around the quality of the services that they receive to help us continuously improve. So those are, again, some snapshots of some of the things that we got on the radar coming out the gate. Here, and this is something that we have to refine, amongst ourselves as we discuss this, is the type of information that the board wants to see and how frequently in terms of our progress. And so we're going to have scorecards for different levels. So this is an example of a board level scorecard where you see high level metrics for each of the 6 strategic priorities. So under, as an example, under exceptional student experience, the type of things that we feel you want to know at a high level are graduation rates, obviously, our enrollment, our academic progress rate, and then also, retention as well. So we're going to continue to refine this and solicit your input as well on what types of information you as a board want to see. We have a bunch of metrics, as you can see from the plan. So internally, we're going to stratify those as well. Several of those will be presented at our leadership meetings. Several will be just reviewed at lower levels in my office. Some of that will be shared with the deans and the provost's office. So this summer, that's one of the first things we're going to do is to, as I said earlier, really stratify and finalize the reporting monitoring component of the implementation. And then we're going to use some action plans as well, which I said earlier drives the implementation. So when we look at each strategic priority, there are related goals for each priority, and then each goal has a set of strategies. So this is an example for if we looked at strategic priority 1, goal 2, around our retention and graduation rates. For each strategy, we have a series of action steps and deliverables, and then we have persons who are responsible for those specific action steps, and we have timetables, and then as we report internally, we'll have status updates. And so this is one of the tools that we're going to use to make sure that we don't lose sight of any of the things that we should be monitoring and tracking as we implement. And then in summary, there's an excerpt from the actual strategic plan document, which just speaks to the process and our thinking and how we view as a work group and administration in terms of what this plan is going to do for FAMU. And it's going to help ensure that FAMU remains a leader in higher education and a vital resource to our constituents well into the future. And so that concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Eddington. Just wanted to add that I have had conversations with the Board of Governors. I did speak with Governor Levine, who is our FAMU liaison, about our progress. He was especially concerned or interested in the fact that we kept the performance funding metrics highlighted, and they are on page 7, sort of clearly illustrated where we are and where we plan to go for each of those 10 metrics. We will continue to update those as we go. Now that we, potentially have a framework, the real work begins. And so, Dr. Eddington has outlined sort of how we're going to think about tracking progress and holding ourselves accountable annually and quarterly for some of these metrics, because we'll have key progress indicators. So that's, that's where we are. I am, pretty excited about the product. Open to discussion if we have any comments or concerns, things we need to address.
Madam Chair, just a question.
Sure, Trustee Moore.
Related to the planned action steps for the summer, I know that one of the things that we talked about from the budget meeting tied to the planning and budgeting because I got to worry about these dollars, the planning and budgeting for next year with the strategic plan. So could we actually list that as one of the action action items? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I might, I too want to thank you for your leadership on this matter and commend the team as well for their great work. And it seems like Trustee Lawson, now that you and I got out of the process, they made a lot of progress. Right? I don't know quite how to take that, but they've done a very good job. And it's been a pleasure watching this develop the last year. Things like
Thank you. You guys let the framework, you put the tracks down and we just put the train on.
with the train.
Great job. Trustee Moore.
So I mean, I echo Dr. Robinson's point. I mean, I think that from the beginning up until now that it's toward the end, it's been really nice work. And I think the thing that I liked most was when we had the retreat. You guys did a really nice job of laying out each priority and allowing us to talk through it. So just making sure I understand. So from here, once we approve it, it goes to the Board of Governors for their approval, or do they approve it, or is it just for their information?
They
They approve it.
They actually approve it. Okay. All right. So from here, we basically have to vote to approve it. And I think the other thing that I like also is, and I know we've talked a lot about metrics and measuring, but, to you guys' point, just giving us the right level, and I know you're going to have deeper drill downs on campus with the deans and others, but giving us the right level just so that we have a sense of confidence that, yes, we are making progress on each of the initiatives, and we won't need to go, maybe as deep as you would share on campus. And I know you guys are working on it, but just kind of that delineation so that we can keep tabs on it. And, overall, I think this puts us in a good place. Just a small question or concern, and we were just kind of talking this through. I was looking at and it may come up in the DSO discussion, the fundraising element, right? I mean, we talked about this briefly, but, that's one where we really need to see what the plans are to get to the targets and the strategic plan. I think, your targets make sense, but we need to see the mechanics of how we're going to get there. And I know that's not for you guys to deliver, but that's just the one thing that's hanging for me as I look through all of this.
So I think we can probably address that in thinking about what the strategic planning committee looks like from here. Because
Yes.
obviously this has been, a birthing process, I call it, in many ways. The next step, I think, is to have those plans and those presentations sort of as quarterly. So I'm envisioning sort of every meeting, one of the areas will come up and actually give, a presentation on what their strategies are, what their targets are, and how far along they are on those targets, so that we have an idea, macro, we'll get the scorecard and have a macro level idea, but we'll also be able to engage in some of the conversations about what's actually happening on campus to make sure that we feel comfortable with the level of activity and the progress that we're making.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
Good, no, you're fine.
All right, just one other thing, I thought about it after you started your conversation. It was tied to looking at the area on resource development and fundraising. Would it be possible to add one that looks at new donors?
Okay.
Where we actually quantify what, the number of new donors we're out, or messaging on our 5-year strategic plan, they're buying into it. What's that number?
Definitely doable. We'll add that. And I think what I mentioned earlier is a focus not on rates in general, but on absolute numbers. So I think that that's something we'll make sure that we incorporate. Trustee Mills?
So there's one answer you could give me that would make me really happy, but the question really is, first of all, let me just acknowledge all the work that you and your team has done, along with Trustee Washington. It is admirable, and I'm very proud to be where we are as an organization. Second thing, though, is that there's a lot of these strategy books, whether it's done by Dr. Eddington or McKinsey, that are in a lot of shelves, right? So my real question is without waiting for the Board of Governors to approve, because that's their thing, how do we go fast from here?
Yeah, so I think, and how I think about this process, I always think about what's going to be different compared to what we've been doing or how we would normally implement a plan. Like if this had been done 3 or 4 years ago, I compare that process to what's in place now. And so specifically in response to the question, I think one of the things that has happened, that I'm biased, right, is the creation of our division where I have people on my team whose job it is to do this. And this is new, right? We have a focus around this whole, not just this plan itself, but the strategic priorities and the concepts that are described here. And so we have the machinery in place right now, as soon as y'all approve it, that there's no delay in us moving forward. We're ready to go right now. And some of these things have been implemented already, right? But in terms of
That was the answer I was looking for.
Yeah. You hit it. Okay. But that's where we are. Yeah, there's no delay.
Okay. Because, look, I know you're in an uphill battle, right? You're, how should I say this? You're in sort of a public forum. You're in a university environment, all these things that make this kind of work different than a normal business in many respects. But, in the normal business world, it is all about execution and speed, right? Because the moment you think you've set the bar or the line, that line moves because of competition and what the other universities are in the system. So, as we think about how we compare ourselves and recognizing that it's new to your organization, there's some quantum leaps you have to make very quickly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trustee Mills, sorry. Looking at Warren.
There we go, more and more.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Wow, I guess.
There was one thing I wanted to mention. So I had good conversations with each of you around the plan, and I did want to acknowledge my great colleague, Trustee Grable. She had some good feedback around her favorite work plan. We are going to add a strategy. I'm sorry, workload. Right, workload. I'm sorry. I got all the work terms in my head. Faculty workload. We're going to put a strategy, a bullet in strategic priority 2, goal 1, that just captures our commitment to addressing that issue. And so that's going to be a modification in addition to any minor edits that we get from the copy editing process. But I wanted to acknowledge that and go on record to acknowledge that that's going to be in the plan.
Thank you, VP.
Murray, Madam Chair,
Yes, Trustee Carter?
just one kind of subpart to that is that picking up on Trustee Grable, I think that as we move forward to our online, I think we need to make sure that we give faculty credit for doing those online classes as well as we move through that so we can get a real feel for the workload issue and how that's moving forward on that. We don't need to change anything. We just want to kind of clarify that point.
Thank you, Trustee Carter. We can do that. Well, I guess the briefings went well then. I heard that you guys had a very good conversation individually with Dr. Eddington. I want to thank you again for being so flexible and having your team available to answer all of our myriad of questions. It's obvious that you did a really good job in briefing. So if there are no other comments or questions, I would entertain a motion that we approve this university strategic plan, including any minor changes that might be needed for technical, or obviously the couple that we just mentioned, and then any technical edits that might be needed.
Madam Chair, move approval.
Thank you, Trustee Moore.
Second?
You can't.
You can.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's right.
Second.
I done joined the other committee for the day.
Thank you for the,
So many vice chairs,
Good
I joined
try.
another committee. Sorry about that.
Trustee Carter, you're
I
on the,
second it. I'm on the committee.
thank you.
Thank you.
Any debate? If there's no debate, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? All right, the motion carries. The next couple of 8 items are information items. Actually, the first one is, we just actually had a bit of a conversation about Trustee Grable. Very excited about, the making sure that this is a living document is very important. And I think our discussions that we've had around concerns that we have seen even through the, the retreats and the process, that's what this is about, and that's how we keep it alive. So the faculty workload study, Trustee Grable brought up at the retreat, and it's a very important issue. And we are going to do what we can to make sure that we frame that out and do our due diligence and make sure that we are doing, the best we can to ensure that our faculty are supported. So Dr. Eddington's going to give us an outline of the framework for that study and the timeline.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so we're going to conduct a study on this issue of faculty workload. And some of the things that we're going to do as part of the study are describe what the workloads are for our faculty. I think there's a lot of maybe lack of clarity in some cases about what is the workload here. And how does our workload compare to our other SUS institutions and some of our peers and aspirational peers? And so we're going to dive into that and come up with some information and data that we can present to show here is where we are as an institution. This is what our faculty workloads look like. And Trustee Grable, she pointed out that she wants to make sure that one of the things we do is, as we look at the different types of faculty positions, we're clear about what those duties are. So for people who are in faculty roles that teach, she wants to see that the description of the teaching faculty workload and not combine, say, for example, a person who's an administrator in a line and cloud the issue. So that has to do with this whole description of the different types of positions and in presenting information that accurately portrays the workload. And then I think as a board, we will share that with you all and then follow your lead in terms of what we want to do with that information.
Thank you. Any questions?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to follow up again.
Sure, Trustee.
Am I recognized?
Yes.
Going back to online for a moment, is that part of that process is going to require the faculty working in conjunction with, other experts to develop that course as well as offer it. So somehow or another, Trustee Graber is probably better at this than I am. Somehow or another, we can balance that out because that's going to be, obviously, that's a strategic emphasis for us on online education. But in the context of where we are now versus where we need to be, we're probably going to want to be more robust in our offering. But by the same token, as faculty are teaching in the, traditional or residential model, and then getting ready to develop those courses, somehow or another, we have to come up with some basis of fairness. That's probably the best way I can say it on how we do that.
Thank you, Trustee Carter. Your point is noted. Trustee Moore?
Just wanted to know that the November 30th date that we're targeting, will that also include general recommendations for consideration?
VP Eddington?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, state the question again.
The November 30th presentation to the BOT,
Okay.
I know it will be fact-finding, and this is what we discovered as a result of researching, but will it also include some general or general recommendations for us to consider?
Yeah, so we can, if that's what you want. I think what we were intending as a first step was to get the information and present it to you all, and then let you all reflect on it, and then maybe you all would tell us where you want to go, as opposed to us getting information and then also at the same time saying, well, here's what we recommend. I think Personally, that's another phase of the project. But whatever you all request is what we'll do. But we were thinking of really first just using our time to get the information to you.
The only reason I'd ask that is because a number, I mean, the large majority do not work in this area. So even if you present all the information in terms of next steps and what could we possibly do, it's going to have to be founded on the reality of what can happen within the structure, because this is not their everyday jobs. So that, I would say that, were it not another topic, it would make sense just exactly what you're saying. But with this one, we may keep you in limbo if there's not enough people that have that understanding of what are the possibilities.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. I think we have to thread the needle of providing some trend data
Yeah.
and then some guidelines. I don't know that we can have some recommendations per se, but I think that you can help us
Right.
figure out what the data means and
Yeah.
then help guide us towards some recommendations.
Okay.
Trustee Grable and then President.
And I think that's a very good point that Trustee Moore brings up. And we'll be looking at, I would think, quantitative as well as qualitative data, which may offer those observations that she's recommending. In addition, if you don't mind, Chairman Washington, I'd like to also, and you and I probably talked about this yesterday, that we're looking at actual numbers in addition to percentages, because again, I think that was brought up for another issue by you, and I think that's really important here, because then we start to realize, one, the total number of faculty members that we have, the number of them that are actually more full-time teaching or less teaching and more research, but this is going to be an opportunity for the university to really, and the board members, to really understand how faculty's time is divvied up. That teaching, research, and service goes to our AORs, as we like to refer to them here. AORs, assignments of responsibilities for faculty members, which really gives, again, the administration, the university as a whole, and of course the Board of Trustees, an opportunity to understand what the focus is, because that's predetermined for faculty. And a lot of people who are outside of the university enterprise may not be aware that that is what guides faculty, and that is a decision that comes with the faculty member in a association with their supervisors, whether it be chairpersons, deans, et cetera. So I think this is a really good opportunity, and I want to thank Dr. Eddington, of course, Mrs. Barrington, and Dr. Shanti Friday Shroud, and all of your team members. I thought the discussion was very thorough, and we've had several. So I think we've reached the point where we both understand where we want to go with this. And I want to thank you, Trustee Washington, for your diligence and diligence in making sure that all concerns are addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Grable. President Robinson?
Yes, Chairman Washington, I just want to point out, too, that sort of a parallel and highly coupled process that we are about to engage in as a result of the recent collective bargaining agreement, where we now must, right, look at the criteria around at least, research, such that fits into what is actually proposed for the board's consideration, because I think it's an important, a great opportunity here to link these such that whatever that load is and whatever the criteria are for research in terms of where FAMU plans to go, that they coincide appropriately, okay? Because right now you could argue that there's a misalignment in terms of research to institution, and we have an opportunity, through this process as well as the collective bargaining, process to get those properly aligned.
Thank you. So this was just an information item. If we don't have any other questions or comments regarding the faculty workload, that is actually the end of our agenda. I think I did hit my glide path. If there is no further business, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
We ready?
Oh, yeah, we're ready. sorry, trustee Perry's.
Okay, I will call, no.
Give me that damn thing. Yeah.
Now, later this afternoon, we're gonna.
What happened to this man?
We'll try to follow yours.
Well, I don't know what Does it work? Different things that you don't use.
Exactly. Touch that muscle in about 30 minutes.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm not Craig Reed, our chair. Our chair is away on business that he could not miss to be with us today. The audit committee meeting is now called to order. Ms. Barrington, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Trustee Craig Reed. Trustee Gary McCoy.
Here.
Trustee Harold Mills.
Here.
Trustee Belvin Perry.
Here.
Trustee Robert Woody. Trustee Robert Woody. I believe we have Chair Perry filling in for Trustee Reed. We'll let him decide if we have a quorum. We do?
We have
We do
three.
have a quorum. We have 3.
Okay. We have 4 action items. The first action item is the approval of the minutes of our meeting of March 3rd and 16th. They were posted for review online. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it was moved by trustee Mills, second by General McCoy. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposes? Okay, the audit committee's minutes of March 3rd and March 16th are hereby approved. The second action item is an election of a vice chair for the audit committee. Are there any nominations?
Mr. Chair, I would nominate you. You're off to a great start.
I second.
Okay, are there any additional nominations? All those in
I move
favor
the
by the
nomination.
sign of aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposers? Okay, the next action item is the approval of the compliance and ethics charter. We had workshops on May 17th, 2017, during which the compliance program was discussed at great length. The audit committee is required to adopt the charter and to define the purpose and mission of the compliance program and the roles and responsibilities of the chief compliance officer and the board of trustees related to the compliance program. The compliance and ethics charter was posted for review. Now, we're going to have Vice President Givens give us a preview of the significant provisions of the charter. I'm going to ask everyone to hold their questions until Vice President Givens has completed. Then we will have questions and discussions. VP Givens?
Okay, thank you, Trustee Perry. We did have the workshop that we held in May where we went through this in some detail, and so today I just wanted to hit the highlights of what the charter does and what some of the provisions are. The first, it just defines the purpose and mission of the compliance and ethics program. It provides oversight, it promotes the coordination of the compliance function among the various university programs, and supports the university's mission and strategic plan by ensuring that compliance risks are identified and managed, that the control environment is established to show a commitment from the top, and to provide some general compliance training, as well as an avenue for reporting of potential non-compliance and ethical behavior. And also, the compliance program will develop the policies and procedures to promote the compliance program. The reporting structure is we're proposing that the compliance program be kept within the Division of Audit and Compliance where it resides currently. That and the Chief Compliance Officer will report administratively and functionally to the Vice President of Audit and Compliance. The charter also provides for the authority of the program, as well as providing that the function shall not be restricted, so that it has access to the records and people that it needs to perform its job. It also provides for the Board of Trustees' roles and responsibilities, which include to approve the charter of the Compliance and Ethics Office, and that's what we'll be asking you to do here today. It also, the board will approve the annual program plan. It will communicate with the Chief Compliance Officer to be sure that there has not been an inappropriate scope or limitation on the activities, and ensure that the Compliance and Ethics Office has the resources it needs to carry out the program. The Chief Compliance Officer's duties and responsibilities are primarily to perform projects and activities that fulfill the requirements for the compliance program, and to operate in accordance with the standards of the Florida Code of Ethics and the Code of Professional Ethics for Compliance and Ethics Professionals, and the U.S. Federal Sentencing Guidelines. And also, when compliance performs investigations, it's to do it in accordance with the standards that the Board of Governors has adopted for investigations. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes the presentation on the provisions of the compliance charter, but I would be glad to take any questions.
Okay, are there any questions or matters for discussion? General, anything you would like to ask, Mr. Mills, or any trustee members?
I was fine with it.
Okay, is there,
One comment, just
Go ahead.
as a point of reflection, in our earlier discussion around the delegation of authority to the president, there's obviously connection directly to this person as well as the compliance officer. I forgot which paragraph it was. I'm sure you know
Yes,
off the top of your head, but that is in there as well.
okay. Mr. Chair?
Yeah, I know that, this Chief Compliance and Ethics Officer was a requirement even by the Board of Governors. So when do we have to comply? What's the time frame by which we have to?
The Board of Governors put a 2-year time to implement the program, which that would be November 2018. In my discussions with the Board of Governors, they intend to have the program operational at that time, even though not everything may be in place, but they do expect to have a program operating by that time. So our timeline is really to get it up and operational by June of 2018.
June of 2018? Okay.
So we will expect to have hired the compliance officer by when?
We'll be advertising the compliance officer position next week, and so we're proceeding to try to hire a compliance officer and have them on board as early as we can.
Okay.
That was really my question.
They're going to need some time to get set up and get everything lined up.
In place,
Yeah, get it in place so they can be prepared to kick it off. Okay, any other discussion? Is there a motion to approve the compliance and ethics charter?
So moved.
It's been moved by trustee Mills. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by General McCoy. All those in favor by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Any opposers? All right. The fourth action item is the approval of the direct support organizations. Those include the Rattler Boosters, the FAMU Foundation, and the Alumni Association. Of the audit reports of June 30th of 2016. The audit reports have been distributed to the board members. Vice President Givens, would you please provide us a summary of those reports?
The direct support organizations are required by law to have an annual audit done, and the university regulations require that the audits be submitted to the president and the audit committee for approval. So today we're just presenting those for approval. Just to kind of take a quick look at the results of the audits for the year, we received the audit reports for all three direct support organizations. All three received an unmodified opinion on their financial statements, which means the statements were fairly presented in accordance with accounting principles. None had deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting or any issues reported that related to compliance and other matters. The law also requires that a management letter be issued in connection with the financial statements. Now, the management letter, they're just basically some findings that may not rise to the level of being reported in the audit report as an exception, but areas for improvements. We see that the foundation did not have any management letter comments for the 2016 year, and it did note that the two prior findings had been corrected. The Alumni Association did not have any management letter comments for the 2016 year, and then for the boosters, we did not receive a management letter as yet, but there was one that was referenced as having been issued. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes the presentation.
Questions or discussions?
The management letter from the boosters, that means that the letter was sent, but we don't have a copy of it? Is that the concern?
That's correct.
A management letter has a management letter would have findings, not necessarily findings, but observations, is that right? So things that there might be concerns listed in that letter, is that correct?
Yes, generally that would be the reason that they'd issue a management letter or say that one was not issued.
Any additional questions?
Mr. Chair, just to follow
Yes.
up with the question posed by Trustee Washington, do we know who the letter was directed to? Since we don't have a copy of it or have the management letter that she's referring to tied to the boosters?
You want to know who it was issued to?
If we don't have a copy of it and we believe and know that one exists,
well, the reason I say one existed is in the reports that we did have, it referenced a management letter. And we did ask for it, and we just have not received it yet.
Do we have any idea what the contents of the letter was?
We don't.
Is there any way that we can find out the contents of the letter?
I think it would just be a matter of we need to follow up with the boosters. And the boosters hired the CPA firm, and so the boosters can get the letter and then provide it to us.
We don't have a right to the letter, only if they want to give it to us.
Mm-hmm. The one thing I want to point out is that we have new leadership with the boosters, they're under the direction of Tommy Mitchell now, so I don't think the problems that we've faced in the past will be going forward with us under Mr. Mitchell's leadership. But it is quite puzzling that the letter, we're not privy to the contents of the letter. It's quite disturbing, at least to me.
So, just to make sure I'm clear, this audit was done by another, not by our team, done by a third party, right?
And a CPA firm did the audit.
So, and it was done and given to the booster board or the boosters to review. So, Mr. Chair, I'm not on the audit committee, but I would suggest that you require them to deliver the letter to you.
Okay, I get with Mr. Givens and I get with our chair, Craig Reed, and we will try to get a copy of the letter from the boosters so that this board would be privy to what the deficiencies, if any, were there, so we won't make those mistakes in the future. It is to simply get a letter and hide the contents of it raises more than red flags.
Right.
Okay, any other matters for discussion? Is there a motion to accept Mr. Givens' report? Noting we've asked Mr. Givens to get with the chair to make a formal request of the boosters for that on behalf of the board, of this committee and the board.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor by the sign of aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Just a quick clarification,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. Just to you have not asked for the letter from the boosters yet?
We have.
You did, okay.
And some of it is because as Trustee Perry indicated, they've got new management. They didn't have staff. The boosters didn't have staff from about November until May.
Yeah.
And so when the new executive director took over, he just kind of stepped into it. And
Okay. But your request was of the new director. That's what
Right.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Okay, VP Gibbons, do you have any addition? I think you had some information items.
we do.
Would you proceed with those, sir?
Sure. The first information item has to present the results of the Quality Assurance Review Report that was done on the audit for the Division of Audit and Compliance. This is basically an audit of the auditors, and it's required by auditing standards to be performed every 3 years. Primary objectives of the assessment is just to determine whether or not the internal audit activities is conforming with the Institute of Internal Auditors standards, to evaluate whether the audit activities operating effectively, and then to identify any areas where improvements could be made. We did receive an opinion that we generally conform with the standards issued by the Institute of Internal Auditors. And that's the highest rating that's given. That basically saying that in general that we're doing okay, and that's as opposed to saying that we only partially conformed or we did not conform with the standards. The methodology used basically consisted of conducting interviews. They reviewed our policies and procedures, and then reviewed the work papers and reports that were issued. And they did identify some areas for improvements, and I will walk through these fairly quickly, but if you have questions, I'll be glad to come back and we can talk about any concerns that you have. The first recommendation really was to the university in general, just noted that the university does not have an enterprise risk management function, and recommended that the university consider maybe putting some of the enterprise risk management functions into the compliance function as it's implemented. Now, and this is something that has to be considered by the audit committee to proceed with, but until any action is taken, the Division of Auditing and Compliance will continue to do a university-wide risk assessment every year and then present those results to the audit committee. The second recommendation just has to do with what we try to do as an organization is add value to the university. And so they indicated that one way that they thought improvements could be made was to ensure the prompt resolution of findings. And I have a couple of slides on this later as to what we're doing in connection with that. It also just recommended that we provide some additional recognition for staff, specifically in trying to provide an advancement mechanism so that staff could be promoted. And so we're consulting with HR on what we can do with that. It also recommended that we continue use of technology. And in connection with this, we are starting to use more of the data analytics software that we have, and we're also in the process of acquiring an automated work paper system to help us in our project management. It also recommended that we develop a reporting format to report certain performance metrics. These will primarily relate to efficiency and effectiveness measures. And so the implementation of the project management system will help us greatly in this regard to be able to do that. It also recommended that we link the risk assessment that we have done, the annual risk assessment, link that to the strategic plan just to provide a correlation between the two documents. And here's just a recommendation that we implement the project time system, and we've evaluated some vendors and expect to have that acquired by the end of the year. Also recommended that we do some things in staff development and management. And these, again, I'll point back to using the time management system or the project management system to help us in this regard, just to measure things like the number of hours we spend on projects and when we start to get behind, and just to keep those on task. It also recommended that we do an ongoing risk assessment rather than just an annual static risk assessment. And so we'll be doing that through discussions that we hold during the year, and then evaluating whether or not there's changes that need to be made to the work plan. Recommended that we make some changes to our operating manual. Basically, these were some things that we have implemented some different forms, different procedures, and we just need to get the manual updated to incorporate those. And so that was the presentation regarding the quality assessment review. But are there any questions regarding that?
What would be the next step in having a workshop to discuss these items?
We could do that.
Rather than just let them
Mm-hmm. Well, actually one of the recommendations that was made that would relate to having some type of a workshop. So that would be a good step to do.
Trustee Moore?
if I recall correctly, and maybe I'm thinking too many things falling into Dr. Eddington's pot over there, but I thought one of the things that we were attempting to do is to make sure that as we got and received recommendations, findings, observations, that there would be a place that we would have the central depository that would make sure that these items were addressed so that we were not seeing them year after year and recognizing them in that way, but we would have some sense of if we've implemented a solution, what we believe is a solution, that there would be more than, there would be that body or that group's engagement. Is that right? Is Dr. Eddington's office involved in that?
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Dr. Robinson?
I think these are what Rick is talking about for compliance-related issues where we've not, met the mark in those areas, and so those appropriately go to his area. Now, we can also track them through that division. I think Rick is more looking at issues of non-compliance, audit findings, some of which might be related to, some of the goals and objectives in the strategic plan, but a lot of them won't, because this is how you do business over here on Rick's side when it comes to fraud, waste, and abuse, as opposed to whether or not you can get to the same metric, but you can get there doing things entirely wrong. And so Rick has to monitor that through audit and compliance.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to take it out of that area, but just more along the lines of the question, because some of the things that we've seen, we see them, year after year, and we'll say, oh, okay, well, we saw that 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I thought that, and maybe
Yeah.
I'm misunderstanding what was going.
Some of those will fall out of there. For example, take the issue of one of those issues, for example, the athletic deficit, right? We pulled that out and put a specific,
Right.
team on that. And, I can mention 1 or 2 others, but I won't. But so there'll be some that he identifies that we will say, okay, this one, we need to put this over here and have this team work on it. So it's not going to it's not Rick's job to fix the problem, but we'll develop the mechanism to fix it, and then if it falls under, strategic planning, we'll make sure that they're the ones who are tracking its implementation.
Thank you, yes.
And because basically what we do is it will follow up to be sure the corrective action is implemented, but then Dr. Eddington's shop would maybe do some monitoring in between to be
Right.
sure that somebody's working on it
Exactly.
prior to the due date.
Thank you.
And then